A sea of Hong Kong protesters marched through the dense city center in the pouring rain yesterday, defying a police ban in a vivid display of that movement's continuing strength after more than 2 months of demonstrations, days of ugly violence, and increasingly vehement warnings from the Chinese government. Let me tell you something, Truth Seeker. I don't know if you believe this or not, and whatever. Trump is not going to relinquish the presidency. You do understand that. If you don't understand that, you better start getting your mind around that idea. Now, by relinquishing the presidency, I mean this rancid, rotten, immoral son of a bitch, when he's defeated in 2020, will not leave. And he'll have more than 2 months after the election to come up with some cockamamie bullshit and declare a national emergency, suspend the results of the election, declare martial law, whatever the fuck whatever he wants to do. But if you think Trump is going to respect the will of the people, you're out of your fucking mind. So, given that, what are we waiting for? You want to wait until after this goddamn election coming up that is going to be so corrupted by his Russian allies to begin with, and his Chinese allies too. Let's be real here. Fascism loves more fascism. They don't want to see the United States to continue to be a democratic republic. They don't want that. Trump doesn't want it. This fucking Mike Pompeo, he doesn't want it. This little Nazi Jew, Stephen Miller, he doesn't want it. The Russians don't want it. The Russian leadership, the Russian people are starting to build up some fucking rage in their population too against the fascism in that country. The Russians are putting tens of thousands of people in the streets every chance they get to protest. The Chinese are. What the fuck are we doing? The only Americans who did anything were the Americans in Puerto Rico, and that was against their own corrupt governor. We could even fucking learn from other Americans how to drive somebody the fuck out of office. Damn. People began assembling, this is in Hong Kong, people began assembling in the early afternoon Sunday in Victoria Park. The starting point of huge peaceful marches in June that were joined by hundreds of thousands of protesters. The police approved the Sunday rally but objected to plans to march to the Central District, citing clashes that had occurred after previous events. But protesters marched anyway. Organizers estimated nearly 1.7 million people turned out, nearly 1 in 4 of the total population of 7 million. We have roughly 350 million people in this country. We'd have to put 100 million people in the streets to reach an equivalent percentage as the residents of Hong Kong reached. 100 million. Sunday's march was the second largest since a protest back in June that brought 2 million people into the streets. 2 million out of 7 million. God damn. The Hong Kong police, they had a different number. They said that the crowd at its peak was only 100,000. Right. But when the march reached the government headquarters in the Admiralty District, the line of people stretched back behind the people in front nearly 2 miles. with large crowds waiting just to get out of the park. People in different parts of the world are trying to show us what to do to get rid of this fascist pig that runs the country and his coterie of gangsters. They're trying to show us what to do while they deal with their own fascist leadership. What the fuck are we doing? Why aren't we paying attention? Experts who reviewed videos from the New York Times said the police had repeatedly violated standards for safely dispersing crowds. Oh yeah, beating the shit out of them, firing tear gas and mustard gas into their faces, or pepper spray, which put the protesters and bystanders in serious danger. Couple of quotes. This is from Amy Bao, 41 years old, a sign language teacher who said, quote, "I came here for the future of Hong Kong and the next generation of Hong Kong. The government has not responded to our demands. I have come out to march many times, and I will keep coming out if the government continues to not answer us." We can't do that. We can't demand that the government of this goddamn country respect the demands of the people in this country. Joyce Mann, a 26-year-old clerk, said she had joined despite her worries about the military being called upon to stop the protest. She said, quote, I still think my showing up is my responsibility. The more people in the street today, the safer Hong Kong people are. There's strength when people unite. Trump, this rotten son of a bitch, knows that. That's why he keeps dividing us and subdividing us and dividing us even further. Why are we letting him? Roads and sidewalks across Hong Kong Island were filled with people on the march or trying to make their way to the start of the march. Many subway trains skipped stops near the start, citing the large crowds, and traffic was snarled across many neighborhoods. The march was peaceful throughout the day, following several days of relative quiet and no use of tear gas by the police over the weekend. And there's more examples, quotes. By the way, if you haven't been following, and who among us has, really, we got our own problems, right? But the protests began in June over a Hong Kong government proposal that would have allowed extraditions to mainland China. That's not what the deal was when the Brits pulled out. They had a 50-year agreement. That legislation, the 50-year agreement that Hong Kong would take care of itself. That legislation has been shelved, though not completely withdrawn, and the demands of the protesters have grown to include expanded direct elections and amnesty for arrested protesters. A lot of the people participating in these marches have complained about the use of force by the police and have accused the authorities of not aggressively investigating the thugs who the police or the government hires to attack the protesters, just like in this country. There's no difference between Chinese fascism and Philippine fascism and Korean fascism and Russian fascism and American fascism. There's no fucking difference in the way force is applied in a fascistic government. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.